lots of fun in limbo in space, which does seem to be something that if you can get used to quicker rather than slower, you're going to be a lot more comfortable, a lot more happy in this world.
Hello, beautiful people. Thank you so much for being here and listening to the show. Next up is my conversation with Bronwyn Williams, a fellow court jester like I am and a voice crying in the wilderness. And Bronwyn is an economist and a futurist who travels all around the world speaking to organizations, businesses, governments, and helping them plot out their most desirable future. Bronwyn is one of the most avid readers I know, and we talk a lot about books and what she's reading at the moment. We talk about AI and the coming job apocalypse and the mushy middle, the privileged mushy middle. And I know that you will love this conversation. It is dense, so put on your seatbelt and enjoy. This is Bronwyn Williams. Hello, Bronwyn. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Yeah, it's so great to have. I'm so glad we could finally make it happen. Tell us a little bit. Where do you find yourself right now?
I have no idea where I am. I'm a very stereotypical millennial. You know, we just constantly in the middle of somewhere between someone and the next person, and from one thing and the next thing, and from one phase to the next phase. I think that's a nomadic generation is something that's basically most of us that are in our 30s, 40s ish are feeling at the moment, and increasingly people on other edges too. This whole sort of space of not being quite here or there or in this world or the next world is, I think, a bit of a universal issue at the moment. But yeah, having lots of lots of fun in limbo in space, which does seem to be something that if you can get used to quicker rather than slower, you're going to be a lot more comfortable, a lot more happy in this world.
That sounds like pretty good advice. How do you get used to it quicker?
Maybe you just are someone who's not too fixated, or someone that doesn't innately have very defined goals that they want to attain. Then you're going to be happier. But I know that at the same time, people like yourself spend a lot of time talking to companies and individuals about setting those exact goals and having something to walk towards. But personally, that's never been something that's really worked for me. I think it's because my brain is quite smart, and if I do set goals, my brain finds ways to achieve those goals, but using the shortcut. Did you ever read the 4-Day Work Week? You know,
Oh,
that
yeah.
seminal.
I did, yeah.
My brain works like his brain works, where it's like, okay, I can become the jiu-jitsu champion by reading the rules and finding some loophole. My brain just finds the loopholes, which means that my goals, if I do achieve them, are always achieved hollow and not quite what I wanted, because there's nothing like a goal to get my brain to cheat me out of the work.
That's really
My brain is literally like gives you the answer, but it doesn't. It feels
gives you the answer. So I think you do the same thing that I do. Is like if you can think your way to the solution and to the answer and experience it enough in your mind, then it's like you've already achieved it, right?
No, but you do manifest it. So I said, I want to own a house. So I ended up owning 8 of them at one stage, but none of them were actually the house that I wanted to live in, And then I said, I want to write a book. I wrote a book, but it wasn't the book that I wanted to write. It was the publishing deal that I could get. My brain will find a way to achieve the goal, but it's not about the goal. It's about the process. If you really want to feel like you're succeeding in life, right? And if you're skipping straight to the answer, your maths teacher is not going to give you all the marks, and your actual internal satisfaction isn't going to be what you thought it was from achieving that goal in the first place. So there you go. There's some free wisdom. Everyone listening to the goal. Goals don't work for really smart people.
Goals don't work for really smart people. I struggle to set goals as well. I get so bored with them. Well, I solve the problem in my head, and then I'm like, well, I've solved it in my head now, and I have to go and do all the work. I don't want to do that. That's going to be lame. I know how it's going to work.
No, my brain is even worse. Like, oh, this is how you should do it, or we could just do this, and we could technically get the win.
You can technically get the win. Yeah, that makes sense. So what does a day in Bronwyn's life then look like if you're not working and striving to your goals, making lots of tiny little steps?
Well, Well, my life is very simple. My life involves reading, writing, and speaking. That's what I do in various different levels on
Mm,
various different days. Generally, the getting paid part is in the speaking part, and the not getting paid part is in the reading and writing part. But like Hemingway said, you have to like do the breathing in and the breathing out in order to get to something that
mm,
is worth sharing with anyone else and worth kind of getting paid for. So my life is about collecting ideas and then sharing them. I think to a large extent you do similar things.
mm,
But I do even leaner version of that. I am quite resolutely against doing work for the sake of work, right? And making sure that if I am doing something, hopefully there's like a reciprocal exchange of value, which does require being in the same place and time with the person that you're exchanging that value with. I think increasingly that's something that I have learned. That's where the value comes from.
the value comes from, yeah, for sure. I was having conversations with somebody this morning that wants to do a whole bunch of online this, online that, online that. It's like, no, no, thank you. I think we'll move along politely from that. I think the right time and place matter a whole lot when you like doing value exchange. That's really important. So tell me,
You know,
what
there's,
did, yeah, go.
there's definitely ways to cheat it. I think this is like our big human conversation at the moment, like all the AI stuff and everything. It is about like you can get straight to the answer without doing the work. You can get the shortcut every time. Everyone has access to the shortcut, but achieving something in the shortcut journey, which I was trying to allude to earlier,
Mm,
doesn't lead to satisfaction or to actual value for anyone, not the buyer or the seller.
yeah, yeah. So do you use AI at all?
I have used it. I'm an early lurker on all technologies, but I'm also very anti using technology in general. Like I don't spend money on the stuff. I don't own gadgets. I don't pay for subscriptions to platforms. But
Yeah.
it's my business to know how things work and to know what their uses and their limitations and all the rest of it are. But I'm lucky enough to have created a career where my value is not based on producing work. Rather, it is, as I said, instead of showing up and helping people solve problems, which are
Mm,
always new and always human and don't require a scalable solution. At the same time, I absolutely used it in the production of my last book, but that's not because I used it to think. Rather, my communication style is largely in the speaking. Writing is a
yeah.
lot more work than speaking. And what I did for the last book that I've written together with Sharon Pierce on how to survive the AI job apocalypse, we got into a studio and we spent 2 full weekends together talking through our ideas, and we got AI to record us to be our dictaphone, which is actually a very old-fashioned way to write a book, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the old great philosophers used to write, like Aristotle used to walk around talking, and then like someone else had
Yeah.
to write it down. Like we,
Yeah.
we kind of we
Yeah.
kind of used it like that. We used AI to be the person to listen to us and capture it all. And once we got all those ideas down onto a text-based page, we painstakingly went through it and we wrote a book from that. We had all the ideas in one place that we spoke through using quite an old-fashioned form of discourse to get there. But we used AI to do that because it was definitely cheaper than hiring a little old lady with a little dictaphone to come and take down all of our words, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I do use it, but I use it in a way that it's probably not the way that
Mm,
people listening to this are thinking about how do I use AI to automate my task flow or to optimize my productivity or to, find shortcuts to do the work. The work that I do as a futurist and as a trained analyst, the value is in the process. It's not in the answer. We're not in the
mm,
business of delivering answers. We're in the business of delivering conversations that include people in the process of thinking and creating the answer at the end. So, to all the lovely young gentlemen who fill my DMs on LinkedIn with offers for automated trend research software or instant scenario development, I'm like, thank you very much, but nobody is purchasing a list of trends and nobody is purchasing a scenario. People are purchasing the process of working through thinking about the future together, which is not something, unfortunately, that AI can do for you. And if AI is doing it, you're not going to get what you want out of it. So yeah, I know how to do all of these things. I've sat through all the
yeah.
demos. I've experimented with them, but in general, the way I'm using it at the moment is essentially like low paid human labor, which is what my book's about, right? The sort of stuff that you should get anyone to do anyway. And are you doing that sort of job? If so, you need to change it quite quickly, or are you doing the sort of job that's actually where you yourself are the source of value?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How would you define your mission? What mission are you on?
My mission is just to learn about things, right? I'm here to observe and report, right? That is the basis of what we do. It's what Dion Chang and myself have done for ages. I think we both sort of he's my business partner, and we both see the world as being a sort of professional outsider, and that means we come with some sort of perspective. It means that you've always got a client. You're not necessarily always particularly well paid for that work, but that's the role that you can play if you are really an outsider and you don't get sucked into being an insider or by looking at the small things. So the
Mm.
professional outsider and a sort of professional observer of what's going on is basically the mission, right? So it's a really open-ended mission. It doesn't have
Yeah, yeah.
a closed end, but that's what we do.
That makes sense with your lack of goals, the lack of goal setting. It's
We're
like
very
keeping it open
undirected.
ended. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so true. I think similar in the work that I do, like the facilitation is the process. The facilitation is the gift. Like it is the value. It's not the goal or
No
the
one's
answer
buying
or setting goals or
that. Yeah,
yeah.
they're not purchasing an answer. They're purchasing the art of asking, which is very different.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's exactly my experience as well. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an international woman of mystery. I totally wanted to be a spy and
Do
or a rock star. And I have written about this too. And technically, again, my sort of cheap brain has kind of fulfilled my mission, but not the real deal, just like the shortcut version, because I do get to stand on stages and tell jokes and even occasionally sing songs for a living. And I also get to be an observer. I get to sit in boardrooms and I get to like uncover secrets and listen to politicians and governments and get the inside answers, just like a spy would. But I'm not an
Yeah.
international woman of history, and no one coming to my concerts. So
No, it's going to concerts. I don't think that's true. I'll come if especially if you're singing.
I do get to stand on stage to like
Yeah.
often awesome like walk on music. You know this. So like again, my
Yeah.
cheap brain is like you got the vision, you standing on a stage, and you also get to go around the world like spying on people, but not
Yeah.
quite the same thing.
Yeah. So how did you get from there to here?
From there to here,
Yeah,
from
from
from, from
dreaming of becoming a spy and a rock star to now becoming a futurist or being a
well,
futurist and a lady of leisure. No, not really.
I did studiously avoid getting a real job for a very long time. Although I have technically been employed, I've not been employed for most of my working life. I got used to, as we said at the beginning, that sort of millennial getting used to being in limbo, never having uncertainty quite early on. But I always worked, even when I did have a job, in a role of literally being that person who got the space to observe and report. Again, not the best paying jobs. This is not career advice, but I managed to work for people who paid me to talk to them or who paid me to collect and sell ideas. So I've always been in the business of selling ideas, whether inside organizations, sort of boss whispering, or whether we were in the world of sharing investment theses and views on the future of the world to sort of producing those views myself. It's not been a particularly large set of gaps. Although I could give you a list of all the things I've done for money, which would make me sound a lot more eccentric. But really, all I've done is of trading ideas basically my whole life.
Mm. Yeah. What did you study again?
I've studied quite a few things. The first degree I did was a BCom, so a general commerce degree. I also have postgrads in economics and in future studies, and I've got a master's in applied economics, which is the policy side of economics, which kind of ties a lot of these things together.
Yeah. Do you think it's worthwhile to go study still?
That really depends on what you think studying is for. If you are studying to get a job, then the sorts of jobs you're going to get from studying are probably not going to give you the return on investment you think you're getting. So you must think very, very carefully then about whether a degree is correct for you or whether you should just get a certification that you can trade and monetize quite quickly. So if your idea of getting education is to monetize it, to monetize yourself, and sell your hours, that equation is not quite the same as it was 20 years ago. We've got a few interesting things we can point to there. One being
Mm.
now graduates in the US have a higher unemployment rate than non-graduates, non-college graduates. We
Oh,
also
really?
have,
Wow.
yeah, right now that's a fact in the US in the developed world. And of course, here in
Mm.
South Africa, bit different because we have a skills shortage, but still at the same time, we have over 800,000 graduates still on the code relief guard. Graduates, not graduates, right? So that idea of job equals work equals good income, the current offers universities are offering you probably might not be for you. There's more to that too. People are
Mm.
retiring with student debt. So you've had 40 years and you still didn't manage to pay back that investment. So that's the reason most people go to university. But if you are going to university studying as an end and not a means, studying for self fulfillment or to gain knowledge or to share knowledge for the sheer joy and sake of gaining and sharing knowledge, then sure, there are definitely spaces for that. I think both yourself and myself have spent large amounts of time and money studying for that purpose, right? I mean, I don't know
Yes.
that you can draw a direct line from sort of monetizing a master's in theology to like a career success, but it makes you who you are, right? So if it adds to
Yeah.
you and to your personal journey, then there's a lot of joy in that. And I have spent a lot of money studying a lot of things over a lot of time, my own money, nobody else's. But I haven't done that with a view to this is going to get me a job. And I've certainly
Yeah.
not been employed for any of my degrees, really, other than the sort of work I do in future studies. And that was just a post grad diploma that I did after I'd already been doing the work. So I already had the job before I did that one.
That's really fantastic. That's really fantastic. I think our views are very similar. I keep on studying. I keep on studying for the sake of studying, for the sake of learning. And people are like, "Why are you studying? What job are you going to get?" Like, well, this big systematic theology factory just opened up in Cape Town, so I'm hoping to get a
Yeah.
job there. Like, that's going to be the thing. I think that was like a borrowed or paraphrased line from what is that show? That 70s show where the
Mm.
daughter was going to study philosophy, and then the brother were like quipped and said, "Well, luckily that big philosophy factory just opened up, so you can go work there after you've done." I want to take a short moment to tell you about The Quest. The Quest is a transformative experience of self inquiry that I run along with my friend Simon in the mountains in Franschhoek. It basically consists of a retreat, at the center of which lies a solo, where you spend time alone in solitude on the mountain, out in the open with only the basic necessities whilst fasting. That means only drinking water. The entire process is designed to help you work through questions that you have. Questions like, what am I supposed to do next? Why am I here? Why am I making this decision? Why do I need to leave this behind? What do I need to leave behind? Or what do I have to pick up to move forward? It's a process that really digs deep into your motivations and helps you chart a way forward. If you are interested in joining this process, we are running the next one in October, and it is a 4 day in total quest. So 2 days of preparation, one 24-hour solo, and then a day of integration. And if you're interested in this, please go onto my website. This is peer.co/quest and fill in your details there. And I will invite you to a info session or have a meeting with you to discuss about why you want to go on this and whether or not this is a good fit for you. This has been one of the most transformative experiences of my life. I did my first one, a 12-day quest with a 4-day solo about 8 years ago, and have facilitated many, many, many since. And I'm always amazed about how much this process transforms a human being. I would love to have you become a part of that circle. If this resonates with you, please reach out via my website. What in this crazy world gives you hope?
People who plant trees. I've got a direct answer for that one.
Oh, yeah?
Like if you want
Go.
to know where there's hope in the world, you look where people are planting trees in their own suburbs. And if you want to know where hope is dead, look at the parts of Johannesburg where those old trees have rotted, or the terrible new money residents have moved in and cut them down. That's where hope goes to die. But if you see a community, people own houses, people are buying. That means they care enough about their community and see enough of a future for themselves to buy. Then they plant trees. Tenants don't plant trees. Owners plant trees. People that both care enough to own a piece of their own future and to literally plant roots. That's what gives me hope.
Yeah.
And it's
Where did
not in
you
the
see
places
that?
it's not in the places you'd expect. So if you go drive around, you'll go see where hope is dying and where hope is very
Yeah.
literally growing.
Yeah. Sure. That's really. What the flip side of that? What makes you angry?
What makes me angry? What makes me angry is apathy. and this pernicious idea that we don't have agency. I mean, we can get right into it. I mean, you love
Yeah,
Sam
it's
Harris.
going.
I do. Like,
Yeah. Oh my word.
what
Let's
makes
get into
me
Sam
angry?
Harris.
Let's get straight there. Let's just like touch all the buttons. But, what makes me angry is apathy and this idea that free will doesn't exist and that we
Mm,
are just wind up clocks, that like
mm.
walk around, little wind up toys that walk around that don't have any agency over our own future.
How do you know that free will exists, Bronwyn? Tell us.
You don't have to know it, you just have to believe in it. That's the catch. If you believe it, then you have it, and if you don't, then you don't.
Ah, that's really clever. Do you think that's where people like, I mean, Sam Harris is well known for saying there's no free will, and you just basically a wind-up clock, a product of your circumstances, and you don't have free will.
Yeah. Thanks very
Um,
much. There's a great big cosmic code, and you just playing out your little role.
yeah,
If you choose to
yeah.
believe that means you choose not to take responsibility for anything. You choose to outsource your thinking and outsource your agency and outsource your vote.
Mm,
All you have to do is believe. That's about it. And then it's yours.
yeah. And then what is the risk of not having that? Not believing
Well, the
it?
risk the risk of not believing it is that someone else does, and you end up living in their world, right?
Mm,
This is the absolute dream of every totalitarian and every advertiser. I'm basically lumping them together because I haven't realized that like brand strategists, the advertising industry, and totalitarian governments are all the same person, really. Just the one wears more eccentric clothes than the other. These are the people that want you to believe that you do not have free will, so that you buy what they are selling and swallow what they are putting out, right?
mm,
And this is how we end up with our monoculture, really homogenous, really gray universe that we see all around us, the sort of airspace world where everywhere looks the same and everyone thinks the same. And our role is reduced to consumption and swallowing rather than sort of creating and producing. And if you look at like technological pushes and marketing and advertising and brand pushes and government pushes, that's a much better world to farm, essentially. So, like, do you want to be a farm animal, or do you want to, tend your own garden, like
Change your
Voltaire,
own
by the
garden.
way?
Oh, your
Tend your
favorite.
garden.
What is your? Let's dig into Voltaire because you obviously press that button. So
Okay.
let's go. Liberty, 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 equality, and brotherhood. You can only pick two. Which one will you choose?
The old French one. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. This is like my favorite blog post that I ever wrote, and no one cared. I mean, like, like we have the end of history,
I
but really,
cared. I love that. That's my
the
favorite
end of
song.
history was the liberty, equality, fraternity, which if you plot it out on a triangle, look, I'm not doing the Illuminati sign for anyone that's watching this.
Yeah.
Put an actual triangle out there, feature blood triangle, by the way. You put them in the corners. You can't have all of them. You can only have a balance within them. You can't have all of them all the time. You have to have a balance. And like once we had those three sort of aims for kind of Western society or humanity, we kind of painted ourselves into this triangle. It could end up with various forms of totalitarianism as people dial up the dials on those three buttons. You can only ever find a balance between that. You can't have perfect any of all three of those things at the same time.
All three of
That's
them. So, for anybody that's listening, liberty is liberty, freedom, equality. Equality is self-explanatory, I suppose, and brotherhood, right? So dig into that a little bit more. Like why can't they all exist at the same time?
Well, you can't have full equality. I mean, that's the easy one, of course, if you have full liberty, right? Because full liberty means somebody's going to be greedy. There's only one greedy person out there, like, so
Yeah, yeah.
that person can't have his full equality, much like the sort of paradox of tolerance, right? You can't you those two automatically you have to kind of choose a place along the line. But then if you also start getting into things like fraternity too, it also starts to clash with things like equality, because fraternity is again talking about insiders and outsiders and about who we
Mm,
are and who us is, and all of those sorts of things. And you end up with those clashes, right? And if you start turning up any of these dials too much, you end up with the very dark patterns of history, whether it be fascism or communism or authoritarian, one form or another. Any of those three extremes can end up with, or just straight of nature. If you're a libertarian out there, right? Also not so nice. In a straight up entire liberty world, that's very individualistic, and therefore that's of course at odds with your fraternity too. But the three of them don't work in isolation, they only work in the mean. Again, very sort of like Aristotle on ethics, like
Yeah, everything.
very in the extreme, right? and
Yeah.
the sort of the false promise of having all of these three things at all times is ties sort of Western Democrats up in knots, not American Democrats with a capital D, just sort of small d Democrats, right?
Small d
And
Democrats.
now one of my bugbears, why does Apple and Microsoft keep on converting? Every time I write labor as an economist, a part-time unpaid economist, I write that word quite a lot. I'm not talking about the Labour Party, okay? Stop converting it to a capital L.
Is that what happens? The labor, and it puts it into a capital.
Right, labor. No, not that labor, just the little man.
That's really interesting. I've got a really random question. Maybe. What do you think is our obsession in movies with the multiverse? Why is there this obsession with the multiverse in sci-fi or in like every Marvel? Well, 96% of movies, which are all Marvel movies.
Yeah, this comes back to our point on apathy and not having free will. You see, this it's another thing that absolves us of having to have responsibility for ourselves.
Yeah, because if everything's happening everywhere, you don't need to choose anything here, right? That's my thought. I just wanted to hear that. Do you agree with me?
Responsibility for ourselves, and this is what all the major contentious issues in the world have kind of come down to a large extent. I know that's a huge grand generalism, but a lot of the mistakes we make come down to looking for excuses to absolve ourselves of responsibility for our own choices and our own actions.
Absolutely. So how do we get that back?
I don't know if we do. I think again that's a choice. You have to kind of choose to believe in your free will. You have to choose to believe in the magic in order for the magic to happen. Very Peter Pan, You have to choose to believe in the state of easing to print the money and still spend it. Like you have to choose to believe in these sorts of things. But it's not that easy. It doesn't just necessarily come back. And in fact, we're working very hard to build our tower of unbabel. We're trying to build up towers of not having to understand rather than trying to understand. We're trying very hard to the fruit of, or the tree, the forbidden tree of the fruit of forgetting all knowledge of good and evil. This is what we try to do. Trying very hard to eat that apple.
John, it was one of my favorite theologians said, so it was actually a semiotician. He calls himself a semiotician. And he says, the original sin was a sin of consumption. You were supposed to create, supposed to tend and till the garden, and instead of tending and tilling the garden, you ate the fruit.
Yeah, I keep on saying, Voltaire had to tend that garden. He couldn't do something about it.
Garden. The amount of times I have that conversation with people explaining Candide, I was like, I'm just gonna start giving out Candide at talks as required reading for everybody. And then go, this is what you have to read. Go and read this, and then start making decisions for your own freaking life.
Yes, exactly. But most people don't want that. I think that's as professional outsiders, which lots of us have found ourselves in our sort of strange non-career careers, are these professional outsiders who do think and see the world in their terms, who are horrified of the idea of losing things like free will and agency, and that the possibility of more. Like most people don't want that, and that's something that weirdos like myself you learn with maturity, especially in the role that I'm in. When we do these future studies and foresight, we get to engage with like global leaders, political leaders, governments, head CEOs, and you have this power to kind of nudge, but should you actually be using it, or are you there to kind of again just observe and report, right, and to listen to what people actually want? And when you stop trying to impose what you want, which is so obviously right to you, and you start to actually listen to people, what most people want, and I've said this on LinkedIn, people are like, no, absolutely not. And I'm like, no, but you're a weirdo too, because you follow me. I'm not very popular. You've excluded your opinion. You are the exception by the very fact that you are even here. But I've done so many of these workshops with people trying to figure out what people want in the future, what people want out of the future, what technology people want, what technologies people are excited, or what political systems people are excited of. And most people I'm not exaggerating. I'm usually the only dissenting voice, and there's usually groups of between anywhere from 6 to 36 people. So usually we have a quorum aside from me, and maybe Chumi
Mm.
if she's in the room. She works with me at Flux. She's also disqualified by association.
By
She's
association.
the problem, But like other than us, everyone in the room will be really excited about technological singularity imposing all decisions that person is making, absolving them of their responsibility to make decisions. Would absolutely love to submit to a benign dictator. Like even when you explain the guardrails of benign dictatorship don't tend to hold, past the first like inauguration. But people do want that. People actually want the benign dictators to tell them what to do, to absolve them of responsibility, to absolve them from the absolute horror of agency. Right. And like until we understand that as weirdos and
Yeah.
outsiders, people who think and question
Mm,
and
mm,
wants to be directors of our own futures, until we understand that most people's hunger is to escape themselves and to escape the tyranny of choice and the
yeah.
tyranny of independence. Like how do you actually move forward? Like Voltaire was also a weirdo.
He was very much a
Like,
weirdo. Yeah, of course he was. He was definitely one of us. I hope I'm
weirdo.
one of. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
you know you're a theologian. They crucified Jesus, but his mission wasn't like many of the other religions that kind of said, he has all the rules you need to follow. In fact, the first thing he did was throw the rule book away,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly,
And he said,
exactly.
you have to choose. That's not
Yeah,
no one
yeah.
like that. They him for that. They're like, stop telling me to choose. Tell me what to do instead.
Tell me what to do. Yeah, that's a very. I mean, I've had that conversation often as well. Like where Jesus said, he never said, "Here's the truth," or "Here's the truth," or "Follow my teachings." He said, "I am the truth." Like it's a very weird definition of truth. A truth is a person, and not a book, or not dogma. It's a person, which is hard for people. It's like, what? How can you? What do you
The
mean?
first thing I've heard of Jesus was impose a new rule book.
Yeah.
You have some rules.
Have some rules. Have some clarity. We need some rules, people. Calm down. I was like, I mean, you and I both work with a bunch of CEOs and entrepreneurs often, I feel, want freedom more than anything else. I think more than money, more than fame. They just want freedom. They just don't want anybody telling them what to do. That's why they do it. And sometimes people call me an entrepreneur. I'm like, no, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a voice crying in the wilderness. Like, trying
Profit.
not to,
Yeah, what?
yeah, a prophet. A prophet. Yeah, definitely. Prophets. Out observe and report, right? Prophets. Good prophets don't get invited for dinner twice. That was also my theologian said the same
And
thing.
I'm like, face.
You're the base prophet. That's why you don't get many repeat bookings. People are like, not getting her
Yeah, yeah,
again.
yeah. Well, that's why nothing ever grows. You just kind of move around. That's what the prophet does. He moves from one space to another. The
Yeah.
prophet or Mary Poppins, if you want a secular example, she came,
Mary
and then they
Poppins.
kind of go after a while.
I love that. That's hilarious. Oh my god. So tell me, how do you make decisions, Bronwyn? How do you choose what to do next?
I do struggle with decisions. I don't know if I'm the best person to make decisions. But the way, if I don't know the answer to a decision, then I'll ignore it, and it usually goes away. Whether it's an opportunity or a threat, it does usually go away. This is again not advice. You should not be listening to me with advice. I'm not a motivation speaker, guys. But at the same time, that's the first clue. If you're not like sure, it's probably not something that's for you, right? Like it's the when I do make decisions, I make high conviction decisions, and I do make big risky decisions very very quickly if I know it's the right thing to do. Like
Yeah.
if I make a decision, I can't stop myself from making that decision. Like we're gonna do it. We go all in. So it's either I make decisions very quickly and or I don't make them at all.
How's that working for you?
Uh, I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Ultimately that's where you've ended up. I think a lot
Mm.
of the time those other decisions that you can't really land on, it's because it's for a future that you might want, but it's not yours.
Yeah. Do you think there
It
is a
doesn't
future
belong.
that's for you? Uh, Is
I
there
think
like
there's things
a
that on. This is like getting dangerously close, to the free will questions, right?
Yeah,
But like
I
the
know.
thing that you absolutely like, yes, you got to go do this. That's what you want to go for. And I think the quest is to not be lukewarm on anything, which does lead to a rather chaotic life path. But I'm here for a good time. I don't have a goal. Like, so this is all good. So high conviction decisions, things that are like, yes, 100% we're doing that. Will end up being that at least whatever you're passionate about, you're excited about.
I like that. Have you ever made a really terrible decision that you regret?
I've made lots of terrible decisions, but I can't really say that I regret them. I mean, I'm sure other people looking at me are horrified, but like the biggest decisions of my life, I've made very, very quickly. The things that take a long time to decide that I struggle with are like small things,
Mm.
like I'm sure my 10-year-old daughter must think I'm absolutely crazy because I'll stand there in like a pick and pay aisle and I'll take like 10 minutes to decide whether to get butternut or pumpkin because I'm trying to weigh up the prices and the options and how long it's going to keep in the fridge. And I'm like, I'll put it back and then I'll come back and I'll do it. And I'll take forever. But then I'll decide to buy a house that I've seen once within 10 minutes. I'll just do it. Like the big things are done. And I have no regrets. Like, of course,
Yeah.
then the house comes with the problems that you didn't notice, but like whatever, that's not an issue. So I'm not saying this is a consequence-free way of doing things, but generally I'm good at making big decisions and very bad at making small ones. And that the same goes for like crisis. I'm not very good at like I'm not the sort of leader you need doing like a business as usual, but I'm very good in a crisis. Like, so it's I think we all operate on a different scale.
Mm. Yeah. That was why are you good in a crisis?
I don't know. It's like I'm not very good with small problems. I'm very big with big problems. I'm good at dealing with the big stuff. I'm good
Mm.
at solving problems that have to be solved. When you're confronted with something that has to be dealt with, what I struggle with was much more the things that people are telling you that this is a problem that needs to be solved, and I'm not convinced it is a problem that needs solving at all. I'm not convinced this is worth my attention at all. So I
Mm.
struggle to give my attention to things that I don't think are worthy of my attention. Whereas in a crisis, I see things very clearly, and this clearly has to be solved. Whereas other people are paralyzed by the big choices, but are very good at making small choices. So I think it comes down to the same thing of like, how do you make decisions? Like, I don't make decisions that I think are beneath my sort of cognitive awareness. Good. Like big decisions, no problem. We got this. I trust myself. We're gonna make the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually makes a lot of sense. I quite like that. The
I'm
what is something
arrogant,
that's
and I'm
been,
also people work with on a day-to-day basis. But this is
which
why
is
I don't have a job.
which is why you're unemployable. Like,
But
like
that's an asset in today's day and age because we're all becoming
mm,
unemployable very, very rapidly. And the sooner you embrace your unemployability and find a way to add value beyond being employed, then I think we're all going to be a lot happier.
yeah. Unpack that a little bit. What does it mean for somebody being, what do you call those middle jobs again?
The soggy middle or the messy middle or the
The
squishy
soggy
middle. There's
middle or the meaty middle, like tell us a bit.
bullshit jobs.
Bullshit jobs, yeah. Tell what are those people, if there are one or two of them listening, maybe on the odd chance they stumbled onto this
This
podcast?
is, this is really, really hard for you. I mean, they're probably not going to find it. They're going to exclude themselves by definition, right? It's like no one
Yeah.
wants to hear stuff. It's going to mean that you've got to make a choice and that you've got to use your agency and that you can't just sail along. The people that are in those comfortable, squishy middles, the nice, like sort of fat tire, the sort of love handles of life, like that's where they sort of thrive and live, are people that have essentially come from places of privilege. They don't consider themselves privileged though. Like as a white, middle class, middle aged millennial woman, and I'm sure you find yourself in the same boat quite often, I am always absolutely astounded at how many of my peers who are, by all definitions, more successful, wealthier, have real jobs, have real titles, have like fancy houses and like wives with diamonds on their fingers and stuff, honestly think that they are hard done by and that life owes them more. And meanwhile, they just employed in like some middle management job to go with their middle class, middle
Mm.
aged sort of like mindset and everything else around it, right? People don't understand their own privilege. But when you are a weird outsider, like an observer like myself, who looks at things from a broad perspective, not just from my middle class suburb out perspective, but from a sort of we're all on this sort of like soggy rock hurtling to certain death, like perspective, like when you have that perspective and you realize just how privileged you are to have the 2 cars and the house and the maid and the gardener and all the rest of it, and just be absolutely horrified that people think that the life owes them more. But these are not entrepreneurs, they're not creators, they're not builders, they're salarymen. Right? Those are the sorts of people that should be concerned at the moment, because what human progress in technology, and I say progress with inverted commas, I'm very agnostic when it comes to progress, very Jonesian in that regard. Like, who knows? Maybe it's worse, maybe it's better. Is life really better than it was 40 years ago? For some people, maybe. For everyone, no. I'll put it back to that. But there's this whole thing of progress is definitely not, or privilege is certainly not globally distributed. And a lot of the jobs that we have now, especially the salary jobs, are jobs that don't necessarily add as much value to society as society pays you to hold that position. This is what, like, the kind of David, or sociologist, not an economist, but he wrote about the economy, David Graeber spoke about in his Bullshit Jobs book, which is where the term comes from. This idea that people are overpaid according to the value they contribute to society, which is 2 pernicious effects. One, of course, is the corrosion on the person's soul, where you start to believe that you're entitled to the lifestyle that you have, even though you're not really adding that much to society. I mean, come on, if you're like a PA to like some consultant, are you really adding more value to the world than the lady who's looking after your children at home? You're like, do you really think that you deserve to live in a 5-bedroom house while the person who looks after your children is staying in a shack in Dipsford? Do you really believe that? No, we can't believe that. We can't believe that. So we have to delude ourselves, because that it's untenable. Yet we accept it as given, and we go home and complain that we didn't get a raise. We deserve more. You see, this is the middle. We deserve more. It's so hard. But meanwhile, you're paying someone like a 100th of the income that you're earning, like it's a full-time job, and you're like fine with that, right? This is the squishy middle that I'm talking about. This whole like, but coming back to the point around human progress, to be very good at creating tools to remove those sorts of positions from society, always with a bit of a lag, right? If we talk about the sort of middle class, white collar sort of job that we're speaking about here, they don't really exist, prior to the end of World War II. These are sort of new things, but we're creating technologies. As much as new technologies create these new categories of leisure, essentially sort of like leeches off society's productivity. And that's a terrible thing to say, because you're working very hard and you really do think you would deserve that promotion. But ultimately, in the global perspective, you're not adding that value. You are going on holidays. You are buying the real olive oil from Woolworths, but you're not really adding more value to society, and someone else is working much harder caring in an old age home, or or filling a pothole in the road. That person's actually adding more value to society than you are. You're just earning more money. And technology finds those gaps and replaces you. This is why Microsoft has just fired, another 9,000 people, and told them to go cry at the AI chatbot because, HR doesn't have time to listen to them. I mean, I'm not even joking. This actually
really? Is that what happened? I didn't see that.
Go get some counseling from a bot. Don't cry on company time. I mean, this is like part of their press release. Right? You're like, this is what happens eventually. If you start to delude yourself that you are adding value when you're not in a value adding position, when you're actually in a value extracting position, you'd have been a very comfortable, very well paid, very cushy value extracting position. One day you're going to suddenly wake up and that rug's going to be ripped out of you. And this happens in waves. It happens in starts and stops. This is why we have these sort of watershed moments where suddenly people are retiring with student debt, and graduates are suddenly more unemployed than non-graduates. It's because society's kind of suddenly realized that graduates don't add as much value to society as non-graduates. The market catches up eventually. And this is why you've got to be very honest with yourself. You've got to evaluate with yourself. That's what the book we just written is about. Are you adding value? Are you extracting value? Are you a cost center? Or are you a value center? Now, if you're an owner of capital, to get all the Marxists and all the rest of it, if you are an entrepreneur, or if you are a massive landlord or tenant owner, whatever, you can get away with that because you have power. But if you are just a middle market, squishy middle player that doesn't own the means of production and is not contributing anything, you are so vulnerable. You are dependent on market wins, on technology wins, on trade and tariff wins, on technology wins. You don't have control over yourself. So it works as long as it works, and then suddenly it doesn't. And what we're seeing now, both generationally and if you're looking sort of geographically speaking, and if you look at like sex and gender phrase, you're seeing, as much as we can call it like the AI job apocalypse. And again, job apocalypse is the word job, J-O-B, not value, not your ability to earn income or become a vagabond like myself or yourself, but J-O-B is the sort of this is like guaranteed money in your account every month. Yes, that's the apocalypse for many people in the middle. But at the same time, another way to phrase this is the privilege apocalypse. I don't know, and we're doing a salon with Flex, I think, in the next month or so, looking at Gen X's. These are like the slightly older than us even people, like the people in the sort of 50s, 60s, and how they suddenly finding their whole industries disappearing, right? And a lot of the people worked in that were people, especially in the South African context, a lot of them are white, male, formerly privileged, beneficiaries of apartheid who never really had to work for anything, but still have obligations and children. And, you know, you have a lot of empathy for these people, but suddenly you find yourself in a world that is now only paying you what you're worth, and it might be slightly less than you thought it was. It's not necessarily enough to maintain the lifestyle, the living standard that you had. We see this generationally with Generation Z. This is the sort of 20-something-year-olds, especially in the West, those unemployed graduates who think they're entitled to a job. It's not fair. I have expenses, you know? I've got to go to Mallorca. Everyone's going to Mallorca, Mom. Like, why can't I also? And it's like, no one actually needs a computer science to like grad anymore. Like, we don't need you. Just because you have that degree, just because you come from wealth, doesn't mean that you're going to be valued by society according to how high you value yourself. Now, this is awful on an individual level, but if you are to open your eyes and look, your lack of privilege or your privilege sort of decline is in line with the global privilege incline. You know, as overall living standards are increasing for more people, all those people in India and Africa that didn't even have a cell phone and now do, and suddenly part of the middle classes instead of like living on the street, you know, like we should be celebrating this, but that is coming at a flattening of privilege. This idea that if you are to maintain a luxury lifestyle, you have to actually contribute something to society or become an evil capitalist overlord and control the means of production. You know, like these are the kind of the things that we're having. So does that describe what I'm talking about? This sort of messy middle, the male privilege. Men, this is what Gen Z is unemployed, and why men are now less employed and earning less than women in the UK and in the US and in Europe, right? This whole idea of you got by on the patriarchy, you know, like men got jobs, women weren't even part of the workforce until the 1970s. And then suddenly that privilege card doesn't cash in the market anymore. And you have to justify your value on an individual basis, not on a sort of group stereotype basis. So of course, Gen Z doesn't really get this. They're like, it's not fair. You know, like they don't understand the intersectionality of intersectional privilege, although they spend all their time talking about these things. They don't ever see it in light of their privilege.
Yeah, the irony.
Bad at that as humans. And there's one thing you learn in my job and your job largely. Like as we've said, we sell our time. We are court jesters. We show up, we get paid for our time, we sing for our supper. If the tune's not good, we're not getting paid. If we weren't entertaining enough, we're not getting invited back again. In fact, if we were too good, we're also not getting invited back again. But you are trading your actual time and you have to justify your value. And I'm always knowing, you know, like what my value is in the marketplace. You know this as a speaker. Like we know this.
You know exactly. It's down to the rand.
Understand it because they think they're entitled to that income coming into their bank accounts every month, and that's what we want to shake people awake with this book, is to say you have to start thinking about what value you're adding. And we've tried to sort of put ideas together in terms of how you can do that. Now you can start thinking like a solutionist, although it's solving other people's problems, but this is what we've got to get to.
Yeah, give us like a high level. What if a person's listening, or if somebody's trying to tell their kids about this, or maybe like kids going off to university or trying to go and do a BCom. Like my daughter wants to go and do a BCom, but
yeah. But my BCom was useless. It didn't give me any job, you know, but it did teach me a few things. You know, like I learned something. I learned how to like read an account. You know, I know how to like read a statement. I can put together a financial statement. Do this sort of basic stuff, but it's not necessary to become an entrepreneur. Just like getting an arts degree is not necessary to be an artist. You know, like look at all the great artists of history. None of them went and did a 4-year artistry. It's ridiculous to do this now. But with business too, this is a practitioner sport. And, you know, like I know your daughter's already got her business. What does she need a BCom for if she's already making bank? You know?
Yeah, true. Yeah, she does.
he wants to be part of that experience and enjoy it for as a sort of an end in and of itself, by all means, go
Yeah.
ahead and do it. But there's kind of two things we can look at, sort of broad pieces of advice. The first one is actually whatever you study, it doesn't really matter. Study something you enjoy so you get some intrinsic value from the course that you're doing, even if there is no job on the other side. Go into any degree today, given how fast jobs and technology are moving, without the expectation this degree is going to equal a job. And once you break that expectation, you can see whether this is worth your time or not. Remember, with a degree, you're investing your time as well as investing your parents or the state, or maybe your own, even if you're enterprising enough money. The money is secondary. The time is what you're really investing. Is this worth your time? Are you learning something that's of value to you? So are you getting intrinsic value from this? This is the first question. Because if you are, you're going to pick up some skills there. And this is the sort of second piece of advice, and that is learn how to apply those skills in context to solve a new problem. So I can use an example from Dion here to sort of explain what this is.
Go.
Dion has recently, at the age of 60, decided to reskill from being a trained analyst to becoming a death doula. Okay, so he went and studied to be someone who's basically a midwife for death, right? To help people through grief and loss. And that's a skill that he learned. He'd also learned quite quickly that there's not a huge amount of people who are paying for that particular skill at this particular point in time in particular South African marketplace. However, in context, and his context is as a trained analyst who has contacts in businesses across South Africa who are all going through chaos and confusion and stress and sort of choice paralysis at the moment because the market is shifting, like I said, and business is hard and the world is degrowing whether we want to do it or not. You know, the South African economy is going down instead of up. And he realized these doula skills that help people deal with death in the family, real death, can also help entrepreneurs and leaders to deal with loss in the workplace.
Yeah.
And in the marketplace, right? So that's a way to take a skill and apply it in context to solve a real problem. And that means if your daughter wants to study a BCom, maybe she's not going to find a job as I don't know what is the most common BCom jobs. I don't know, like
a consultant,
junior consultant, whatever. I think most people that do BComs, they end up studying the finance. They can become a CFA because that's supposedly pays well. But you know, like maybe you don't find that job, maybe you don't get on that internship program, all the rest of it. But you could take those skills and use them to start your own business or to go help someone do something, right? So don't think about that career path as being very linear. So firstly, learn things that are worth your time. And secondly, whatever skills you've got, figure out how to use them in context to solve a real problem.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good advice. What would good advice be for somebody in their 40s realizing, oh crap, all of a sudden they woke up and the scales have fallen from their eyes and they realize they're privileged and they're in a cushy middle and they go, dear Saint Bronwyn, what do I do?
A lot of people in this boat. Again, coming back to Dion and his death doulaing. So the first contextual way that you manage to apply that skill is with business leaders who are dealing with like loss of a business or loss of a deal or loss of a market and like having to reinvent themselves. But the other one he's picked up is exactly that. 40 and 50-year-olds, formerly privileged, formerly in the squishy middle, who've just lost their jobs due to all sorts of retrenchments that are happening at the moment, technological retrenchments, economy related retrenchments, just like change of business model retrenchments, that have been working in a career for 20 or 30 years and have suddenly found themselves thrown out into the wilderness without any skills that they can obviously see as being applied in a new context. Now, like say you've lost your job in like a magazine. There's no other magazine that you can go work for. You know, if you've been an editor for 20 years, like it's not like you can just apply for another job. You have to figure out how to take those skills and apply them to a world that has moved on from your whole entire industry, let alone your job, right? So the first thing, like sort of 40, 50-year-olds need to understand is the job's not coming back. There are less jobs and there will be less jobs. You know, like you can't go back. So the longer you spend trying to reclaim what you had to do the same thing again, the more time you're going to lose. You have to let go of this idea of security and to embrace, as we said right at the beginning, uncertainty. And that is much harder at 40 than it is at 20. But what that 40-year-old also needs to do is to be telling than 10-year-old and 13-year-old children, that there's no job at the end of your 12 years of school and 6 years of studying, which is now about the norm. Instead, ultimately, your mission as a human being is to find out how to add value to the world around you. And that's where it starts with this personal audit of what value have you been adding and what value could you be adding by applying the skills that you gathered. And all of us have gathered skills, even if they're just interpersonal skills. Maybe you're just pretty. I mean, there's plenty of money to be made being pretty on the internet. You've all got some sort of skill you can use. Hopefully it's more than just being a pretty face, but everything is monetizable these days. Saying, how do you actually apply that in a way that adds value to the other person? That becomes your mission. So stop looking for a job and start looking for a problem to solve, right? That's what you're going to have to do if you find yourself in this boat where most of us find ourselves, this choppy water where there's no sort of protection of that monthly salary and that monthly dependable income coming in. And this, it's not easy. I mean, like you and I have been doing this for a while. You have to keep on reinventing yourself. You have to keep on figuring things out. There's a lot less security, but there's also possibly a lot more fulfillment in that. Right. So that does become a challenge. It's not easy. I would suggest maybe also just like the 18-year-olds, maybe you don't go think, oh, you just got to like go to university again and study something else. This is not that time. This is 2025. This is not 2008 where you can just reskill, and switch from like a creative job into like a finance job. This is not it. It's a fundamental mindset shift. And actually, in our book, we've got 2 calculators to help you do that. The first one is the bullshit-ometer, which will tell you how much of your current job.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's coming soon. So you can find out how much of your current job or offering is bullshit. In other words, this is valueless. You're charging for. Maybe there's something tricking into paying you. Maybe your boss is paying you to do this, but ultimately it is bullshit, which is a risk. And then there's the other calculator, which is the can you test, which is a selection of questions as to whether you have that sort of mindset to cope with change and to cope with solving problems in context.
Love that. So what do you see
book.
I love that. I'll put the link to the book in the show notes, obviously. But what do you see the world of work morphing into? Do you see no jobs at all, or few jobs, or only value bringing jobs, or what is it going to look like, do you think?
There's still going to be jobs for a while because you need a team around you in order to change the world. This is how the world has shifted. Grab there's people with ideas, rally people around them to move forward into the future. So there are going to be jobs, but they're going to be less jobs, and those jobs are going to be less stable, less lifelong. They're going to involve more flux and more freedom and more flexibility. And this is both on sort of positive and the negative side. More insecurity with more flexibility, all the rest of it. This is not like a speculation. This is a pretty definitive trend. You can see how many people are shifting from being salaried workers to being freelancers or contractors. Sometimes those contracts could last for years, but they're not the same thing as having this idea of having tenure at an organization. And that is the shift that more and more people are falling into, both by choice and not by choice. Most people actually do want a job. We've spoken about agency and how unpopular it is. Like most people, and economists have known this in their models for ages. People are much happier to take a lower salary than to take a higher income with higher risk, right? People are risk adverse. So this is not good news for most people in terms of psychologically speaking, but in terms of actual income, it probably is. If you look at the income charts as to how non-salaried workers' incomes have increased in the developed world as opposed to salaried workers overall. I mean, obviously you have to exclude the mega earners like your Elon Musks and your Jeff Bezoses, but that's not you,
Yeah.
That's right.
That's a very good point.
Squishy middle overtaken by the reluctant freelancers as well as the enthusiastic entrepreneurs, because then you're not the same person. Maybe you're going to find yourself being a reluctant freelancer, not an enthusiastic entrepreneur. Your entrepreneurial clients, Pierre, they're the exception. Like us, these are risk seekers, not risk minimizers. Many freelancers are very risk adverse. They've been pushed into that because having a job actually ended up being more risky than being on your own. Right, so there's a whole lot of mindset shifts coming, but the number of jobs, the number of quality jobs is reducing. That said, there's also going to be some jobs that will end up being more well paid. as the job market concentrates, you're also going to have people at the top earning even more than they're already earning. Again, these are defined trends that we've seen going on, but this is only going to increase as your CEO is managing a hybrid human robot workforce. Those sort of profits trickle up, right?
Yeah,
Like
of
management
course.
will be okay. So maybe if you are someone that definitely doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, there's still going to be a board seat for you somewhere. It's not easy to get. Basically, all careers are becoming rock star careers, is another way to think about this. What's a rock star career? Everyone wants to be Taylor Swift. I want to
Yeah.
be a rock star. But most rock stars work as waitresses, like an Applebee's in Los Angeles. Like that's the profits accrue to the top players in each field.
Wow, that's really. I really like that. I mean, that's the world we live in already. So I feel sort of a little bit more safe.
Yeah,
Sorry, say again.
these trends are already in play. This is not like speculation that I'm just like sitting here and staring into a crystal ball. These are trends that are defined, they're in play, and they make sense. They make
Mm.
sense from a market perspective, and they make sense from a family perspective. If you are a parent, if you have people dependent upon you, if you're dependent upon one job, you're in a very risky place right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true.
Like that's not
Um,
cool.
Nassim Taleb has told us that quite a while ago. Very definitely.
Exactly.
I know you're an avid reader. For those who don't know, Bronwyn is probably the person who reads the most in the world. What are you reading right now?
Oh, I can't remember what it's called exactly. It's the one by I've just started reading it. Um, China Marvel and Kenny Reeves. They wrote like the Book of Elsewhere. It's like a fan fiction based on like on a graphic novel. So I've just started reading that, and it's as always, like these sort of dark graphic novel characters. It's a version of death, or at
Oh
least an
yeah.
immortal person being reborn. So I'm just getting into that. It's a bit different. And then I'm also reading Making History, which is a book of the history of historians. This ties into a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
the work that we do. Stories lead us into the future, and stories are what are how we understand the world as humans. And of course, our understanding of the past is shaped by storytellers who told those stories. Whether they were the writers of the Bible, whether they were the ancient Greeks, like old Plutarch and his lives, these were all individual, mostly men, who wrote things down, and they've shaped our understanding of who we were, which in turn shapes our understanding of who we are and who we can become. So it's a history of historians, and historians who wrote the stories that tell us who we were.
Oh, I love that. That sounds fascinating. What's your favorite book?
Oh, that goes in stages, but I will say my favorite. I'll start with my favorite childhood book, which I think is probably one of the most. Still one of my most recommended books, and that's Momo. Not
Oh,
like the weird, like I told you to read that. I know I told you to read that during COVID. I was like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
probably
I
too.
got the Afrikaans version, and it's such a great
It's one of
translation.
it's
It's
one of the
like,
best books. It's the
mm,
author of the Never Ending Story, but it's much less known book, and it's a
yeah,
profound allegory, I suppose, like
yeah,
on life and on meaning and all sorts of things. If it's a tortoise, it's great. You should
yeah,
read it. If you haven't read it,
yeah. Everybody
don't get
should read it.
confused. Weird, like Generation Alpha horror figure with the big black eyes. That ain't it.
Generation Alpha horror figure. Um, what do you, oh, speaking of horror figures, I'm fascinated by horror figures. What, do you think, you'll probably agree with me, but do you think like horror figures represent certain trends within certain generations? Why do Gen Alpha like those types of horror figures? And why did we like slasher films from growing up?
We also like creepy things. Like, don't you like? I don't know. Maybe you're a little bit older than me, but I think we're pretty much the same age. Like when I was my daughter's age and she's a Generation Alpha, we loved all those urban legends. And there was the one with like the drip, drip, drip in the bathroom, and it's a dead dog. And there was all sorts of stories. We used to love telling these like creepy stories. Children love a thrill, and now they've just got other sort of mediums to tell these tales, right? So they invent their
Yeah.
own sort of like urban legends. Well, they're not urban legends; they're internet legends. This is the universe that they live in, right? We're always drawn to the profane and to the taboo and to the scary, and children in particular. I mean, this can be like Grimm's fairy tales came from. You know, like children
Yeah.
love the macabre. This is this
Yeah.
is this is what kids are. Children love the ideas of death and monsters, and you know, like there's a rich vein to be tapped into there, because you know, like children, monsters go together, and how
Mm.
children learn to either master or run from monsters kind of shapes their whole upbringing. But you can't conquer a monster unless there is a monster, right?
Yeah, very, very true. There's one of my favorite sayings is children don't need to be told that monsters are real. They know monsters are real. Children need to be told that monsters can be defeated.
Mm. Yes, that's
Which
very practical.
yeah. Okay, speaking of Pratchett, so if anybody wants to start reading Terry Pratchett, because if somebody hasn't started, they should. Which one is the first one you should read?
Well, let's start with one that's like a standalone. So I usually tell people to read Small Gods.
Oh yeah, Small Gods.
Very in context. You don't need to know. There's no law. You need to have understood. No one needs to explain what the luggage is. You know what the turtle in the sky is. You don't need that. You can just get straight into it.
Straight into it. And then after Small Gods,
Out with brother.
which one's your favorite?
My favorite. My favorite is like the whole Watch trilogy. But I'd suppose my stuff was really, really good. But it's not the most Pratchetty of the books.
Okay. That's interesting.
I just read it in a personal time in my life. My least favorite are the ones involving death. I can always tell people's intelligence by if they're like, "Oh, the best part of the Discworld is death." I'm like,
the best one. My favorite character is Wrenchwind.
but he's not full Pratchett. I mean, if you read like about actual Terry Pratchett, if you read his nonfiction writing and how angry he is,
Yeah.
like the real Pratchett comes through with in the politics, what he puts into it, and his absolute like horror at injustice, which is the death was the fun stuff. You know, that was the comic relief in between the real
into the real stuff. My favorite character is Wrenchwind. So what does that say about me?
That's perfect because he is everyman, right? You know, like that.
He's like the very surprised hero, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah.
He also doesn't have any goals. We love Rincewind.
What's your reading habits at the moment? When do you read? How fast do you read? Would you read all the time?
I read the business books that I review really, really fast, like probably per page. Yeah, they're not worth spending that much time on. Most business books should have been a LinkedIn post, and most LinkedIn posts should have been, the original should have been a tweet. Like that's still buy my book. My book is great. You got to do something.
You're only going to get the calculator if you buy the book.
No, you won't get the calculator. Actually, we're going to make the calculators available for free because we are, as usual, I'm not very good at selling myself. I'm just very good at selling my ideas. So like, go spread them. But my reading habits are quite erratic. I read because I like it or because I have to. And if I have to, then I'm going to read it. Like, as I said, I'll speed read through stuff. I can get through like business book type things very, very quickly. But other things take ages. Like the one that I've been reading, I've read for like most of this year, I think I started in December, was The Life of Chairman Mayo. Like that was written by his doctor. That was amazing. But it was like 900 pages of like the smallest font you've ever seen. I think I wrecked my eyesight on that. But like that one I read in between other things. But I usually have at least some fiction and some not fiction on the go. And yeah.
Favorite sci-fi book?
Favorite science fiction book. I'm not a big science fiction fan. This confuses people about me, but I'm not a huge science fiction fan. My favorite science fiction.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. People expect me to like that and like Star Trek, and I'm like, God. I'm very uninterested in Star Trek.
Star Trek is amazing. I love Star Trek. I love it for the ethics. Like it's really always interesting from an ethics point of view.
Everyone likes the memes. I do not like the ethics. I have a fundamental problem with the ethics.
Which is why it's so interesting, right? Because they don't always get it right. They hardly ever get it right.
Yeah, no, I like Star Trek. I'm not a big science fiction fan, I have to say. I much prefer the fantasy stuff, like Pratchett and Tolkien. I'm much happier in that vein. I'm not a big fan of the science fiction.
Okay, cool.
I mean, like science fiction, you read you read it to like get the idea and then you move on. That like the actual fiction part of it is usually tedious and hard to chew. I think it's written for boys.
Probably, yeah. Probably. I would agree.
Hmm.
What is a book that changed your life completely?
Oh, I don't know. I think probably Remains of the Day was one of my like all-time favorite.
Oh, Remains of the Day. Such a good answer. Yeah, I really like that.
I will not be revealing further details.
That's really cool. What is a quote for you to live by?
Oh, we got to go back to Voltaire. Like,
Oh, we
tend
got
your
to back
garden.
to
That's
Voltaire. Let's do
the
that.
quote.
Tend your garden.
Change your garden. Full circle. That's the quote. Like, do your stuff. You know.
Yeah, do your
It's
stuff.
got, it's got the verbs in there. It's got the possessive pronouns. It's the whole lot.
Tend your.
Although my Twitter friend, and he was a Twitter friend. I haven't really connected with him since it turned to X. As he said, don't ever search for Tend Your Garden on Twitter.
Don't ever search for Tend Your Garden on Twitter. Why not?
You're not getting Voltaire.
You're not getting Voltaire. That's hilarious. Okay, Bronwyn, thank you so much for spending time with me today. This is really awesome. Do you have any last words or rants or prophecies that you want to drop?
I think the challenge for your listeners, whatever's here, is that you don't have to read things. I mean, you really don't these days. You don't even have to learn how to read, let alone how to write in order to function in our haptic internet era. But at the same time, if you don't, we who do are totally smarter than you are. We know
That's
more than you
perfect.
do.
That's really perfect. I always tell people that's my secret. My top
You
secret
don't
is I
have to. You
read.
really don't have to. You'll be fine. But
But the mushy middle is disappearing. This has been so much fun, Bronwyn. Thank you so much. You're such a freaking legend.
yeah.
And I really hope your rockstar dream comes true in the right way. Thank you for listening or watching. And thank you for being on this journey with me as we try and figure out and find our way through the fog of life and work. So I've been writing a really short little daily letter that comes out each weekday and literally very short. It's less than 50 words. And it is a burst of inspiration with some thoughts on strategy, how to find your way, how to become a better human being and do work that matters. You can go to thisispierre.co/daily letter to sign up and become a part of this community and hear about all the things that we get up to firsthand. Thank you for being a part.